And now we're going to sort of move into more of the substantial questions.
Yeah.
So what are your three favorite policies and why?
My first one is USU membership benefits and discounts, because I download, I'm new and I download the app of the USU, and I realized that the discount, like number of merchants that offer discounts to our members are not enough. So one of my favorite policies is to enhance the number of discounts and benefits that we can provide to our member. This is my first one, and the second one is probably secondhand book store, like online. So to provide a platform to offer students the opportunity to sell and buy a great value secondhand book online on USU app. The third one is probably food ordering system. So when I first attended class, I realized that students have to wait for like over 10 minutes to get their lunch. So one of my policies is to introduce a pre-ordering system, so they can pre-order meals and pick it up at the outlet instead of waiting in a queue. And then given that the COVID-19 situation, I'm also taking consideration about having pre-ordering and delivery or pickup at the store instead of like serving them in the premise. Yeah.
Sorry about that. And that kind of feeds into our next question, which is that the USU is currently facing unprecedented financial stress due to the loss of revenue related to COVID-19. So, if you had to, what would you cut from the USU's current operations, and how do you think that the USU should economize?
I think because so in the past few weeks, I have been looking through USU website, and there is limited information about how they spend their revenue, like how they spend their funding. So this is a really complex decision to make a decision right now, because I have to consult every department in order to have a clearer picture on what can I do. So I think it is relevant to my policy as well. So instead of like cutting funding, we can attract extra funding. For example, saying that we can reopen some of the outlets to provide food delivery, and that may be an extra funding source for USU.
Okay, so you don't sort of have any position at the moment of, how the USU should economize its operations?
Because as what I've said, it is really difficult to make a decision if I don't have a clear picture of what has been happening in the organization. So how much, like what proportion of revenue or funding has been spent in different departments. And to make a decision in cutting funding, you have to consult different departments and take into the advices. You can't say, well, I'm cutting this, but not taking into any advices from the department. So this is a really complex decision to make and cannot be made in such a short notice, I think.
Okay, thank you. And what is one, I mean, I know that you've only been at uni for, a short time, but, in your experience and in viewing, the USU, what do you think that is one thing that the USU has done well during your time at uni, or even, looking back, if you've done any research into that sort of thing?
I think the orientation week was really great. It was a great success. I love it. There were so many students in the campus joining USU together. There were so many clubs in society, so many events, food trucks. And I think this is one of the most successful orientation week I've ever seen, because I studied in a few universities, and USU's orientation week was the best I've ever experienced.
Cool. And what is one thing that the USU has done, you think that the USU has done poorly during your time at uni?
One of those I believe is the transparency of information. So we have been talking so much about, like, you have asked me so many questions, but sometimes I cannot answer them. So maybe um, there is an opportunity that they can make information more transparent so students know what they have been doing, and students pay them, like student fund them as well. So maybe increasing transparency in letting students and staff know what has been done by the USU, maybe like an annual report, because I realized that there is no annual report, I think, yet.
Okay, so, if you were elected to be a board member, what sort of mechanisms would you put in place to ensure that the USU is more transparent?
I would say an annual report, like an annual report really, to summarize what has been done this year and what achievement has been made, and a brief description about what, like, where the funding has gone. Yeah.
Yes. The USU does already do an annual report. So is there anything else that you would put in place?
You mean to make the information more transparent?
Yeah.
I think the other way is to really communicate openly and regularly to update students on information. So I think that board meetings can be like, students can join board meetings if they send USU an email about that. I think, yeah, that's a good way as well.
Mm-hmm. And in the USU meetings, they do quite often go in camera, which means that they're making decisions which the public is not privy to. So people like Pulp, we have to leave the meeting. So, and a lot of people sort of criticize the fact that the USU goes in camera quite a lot. What's your perspective on that?
Can you repeat your question? I didn't quite get it.
So the USU during the board meetings that you're talking about goes in camera, which means that the public is not able to listen to what the meeting is discussing. So that's when they're discussing financial issues and those sorts of things.
Yeah.
Lots of people have said that the USU goes in camera potentially too often. What is your thought on this?
So you're trying to say the students cannot listen to what they discuss in the meeting. Is that what you mean?
In some sections of the meeting.
Well, I think because when I look at the website, so there is monthly report on their meetings, but the decision statement is quite brief. Maybe we can include more details on it, because it's very difficult to get a clear picture if you only have like one or two statements about your decision, but instead we can maybe add more details into each section.
Okay, great, thank you. And just moving on to our next question now. How political do you think that the USU should be? So do you think that the USU should make statements on current political issues that are affecting student lives?
So say, like, can you give me an example?
So recently in one of the board meetings, Pulp asked Connor Werrett, the president, whether the USU would support the SRC's campaign regarding the student housing crisis in the COVID-19 pandemic. And he said that that was not really the role of the USU, it was more the role of the SRC. Do you think that the USU should play a role in these sorts of political issues?
I think the goal of the USU is to enhance students' life, and really, if that decision is like, it represents the interests of the majority of the students, say like 80-90% of the students, I will make a stand on it. I'll support that. Yeah.
Okay, so you're sort of going from a majority rules perspective.
Yep.
Okay. And do you think that the USU should provide a platform for students' political beliefs?
You mean like an online platform or like an offline one? So what specifically?
So like if, students have particular political beliefs, should those be taken into consideration in USU decisions, or should it be more of an apolitical organization?
Well, as far as I am politically neutral, and I don't have a clear picture about how Australia has different kind of political parties, so I can't really give a comment on this at the moment.
Okay, that's all right. Thank you.
Yep.
And so just moving on to our next question. One controversial decision that the USU made was to allow the registration of Life Choice, which is an anti-abortion group, as a club. So many people oppose this decision on the basis of its potential impacts on students who have had an abortion. So what's your position on how the USU should approach controversial clubs and societies?
I think with controversial clubs in society, firstly, I really don't have a lot of information on this, but firstly, I'll look at government legislation. I think abortion has been accepted in many states already. I'm not sure if New South Wales already passed the legislation, but I believe Queensland has already. So because I don't have a lot of information on this, and I can't give a comment right now.
Mm-hmm. But if you're elected as a USU board member, would you sort of take a stance when these types of controversial clubs want to become clubs?
Well, I think students have their rights to form a club, but it is also important to, we have to look at the school's policy as well. So it is very important to listen to students, but also listen to the school and see how we can balance between both.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And so board directors have a fiduciary duty to the USU. This means that they have to put the board's interests above their own, and they can be sued for acting against its interests. So if something really bad was happening at the USU, would you consider leaking this information? And if not, how would you resolve that situation?
So you mean like confidential information not being released yet?
Yeah, so if you found out that something bad was going on at the USU, would you leak that information to the public, or would you try to resolve it more internally?
I think, well, from a professional perspective, I won't be like, if this is confidential, it stays confidential. But the point is that it's not only one board director which is there. We have 10 or 11 or even 12 we can discuss together, and we can make a solution. So instead of like personally leaking those information to the public and create some like difficult discussion out there, I will instead keep this within the board, and we can find a solution together.
Okay, great. And do you think that the USU is doing enough to support the international student community?
I think they have been doing really great, because I did some research. They had like employment, volunteers position available. They have even English classes. I think that there is a lot of support to international students. Yep.
Great. And do you think, the USU could do anything to support international students more?
Probably yes. Maybe to engage them more on campus life. I mean, like in a post-graduation perspective, some of us actually don't like to go to school very often, because for myself, I only have one day of class, and the other 4 days I may go to work or do something else. So I think it is important to engage different, like to engage the diversity in the campus, to engage different student segments, to bring them back into campus and enjoy the different services and products that we provide to them.
Yeah, and I'm sort of interested in your perspective as a postgraduate student.
Mhm.
So do you think that the USU does a good job in reaching out to postgrad students, or do you think they need to do more to help?
I think, like from my perspective, because I'm a newcomer, and I think definitely the USU can make more effort in reaching out in postgraduate students because, as what has been said, we don't come to campus that often because of the class schedule limitation. So I think that there will be an opportunity to engage more postgraduate students. Yeah.
Cool. And this kind of links to what you're saying with regards to campus culture. But, over the past, at the beginning of the year, we saw, the closure of Manning Bar, and lots of students, like you're saying, aren't really coming into campus very often. So
Mhm.
if you're elected to be a USU board member, how do you sort of plan to reinvigorate that campus culture?
You mean after COVID-19 is
Yeah,
finished?
obviously after
Yeah.
COVID-19. Yeah, sorry,
Sure.
I should have clarified that.
Yeah. So one of my policies is to have more benefits and discounts on campus and off campus. So by doing this, I also hope to encourage students to come to the campus more often to enjoy all the benefits we provide to them.
Great. Um, and if you are elected as a board member, how will you ensure that student feedback is taken into consideration when you make decisions?
Okay, so I think um, like from my perspective, I think if we are to listen to student perspective, so one way is to encourage them to join. I have one question. So is
Mhm.
USU meeting available to every student if they want to join?
Um, yes, you just have to register.
Yep, I think this is one of the ways. And the other way is maybe we can um, cooperate with SRC and Supra, so we can take into consideration of students' opinion from different perspectives and segments.
Cool. And the USU has expressed an interest in being involved in selecting the next Vice Chancellor since Michael Spence has resigned. So, what would you want to see the next Vice Chancellor represent?
Um, I think it's to, well, this is a difficult question. I think to select a vice chancellor, we have to look in many perspectives. So not only he or she has to have the experience of leading the campus, but also being, I mean, like maybe like empathy enough to understand what students are experiencing and maybe make decisions that are guided by student needs.
Cool. And I'm just going to ask you a couple of administrative questions,
Yeah,
and then I'll open it up to the other editors for any follow-ups.
sure.
Um, so at the moment, which candidates would you most like to work with, and which candidates would you like to least work with?
Um, I didn't have a lot of chance to talk with them, but I think so. One of the candidates that I know before election is Prudence because she is really active on campus and on Facebook pages as well. So she is the one I really want to work with. And for the list, I haven't reached to all of them, so it is hard to make a comment.
Okay, cool. And what color are you running on?
Carol, a pinky Carol color.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And do you have a manager?
Yes, I do. She is called Yolanda.
Mhm. And what's her last name? Sorry.
By BAI.
Great. Um, so do any of the other editors have any follow-up questions that they wanted to ask?
Yeah, I have a couple.
I do have one. You go, Ellie. You go, Ellie.
Sure. So my questions are, first of all, just following up on your answer with regards to campus life.
Mhm.
I definitely think kind of getting more students on campus is important. But my question is, a lot of students find it difficult to come to campus because they have to work all the time, because rent is really expensive, and student kind of material circumstances are sort of difficult at the moment. So how can we engage with students who might be facing kind of financial disadvantage or might be working all the time to still include them in the work of the USU?
You mean after the COVID-19 or
Yeah,
generally?
after COVID-19.
After COVID-19, I believe that everything takes time. So because you know how the pandemic has been like impacting our lives, and it really takes time for us to recover from the pandemic and also the university and the campus. So I think we just need to really sort of make the effort in trying to attract them back to campus, but it takes time.
Cool, thanks. I was also just wondering if you could give any specific examples of the ways that we could engage with postgraduate students more.
Postgraduate students, yes. So I feel like for postgraduate students, we can. So this comes back to my first policy as well, to provide more benefits and discounts, not only in campus but off campus. So this is a way to engage more students as well. So not only to provide discounts and benefits on like restaurants and outlets within the campus, but also extend these benefits outside campus, so they can they can integrate these benefits into their daily lives.
Oh, sure. I was also wondering if there's any specific examples of new benefits that you'd introduce.
Yes, I want to my plan is to select some of the really popular independent outlets and restaurants and bubble tea shops, and we can get discount from them. So for example, 10% off or a free drink when you spend more than $50, or even free delivery fee if you purchase from that restaurant's outlets.
Cool. And then one final question is just in recent months, the USU has been criticized with some of because of some of their partnerships with companies. So an example of this is the USU ran an ad about horse racing and gambling, and then a lot of people criticized and said the USU shouldn't be working with that kind of business. So do you think there are any principles about which businesses the USU should avoid having partnerships with, if there's any particular types of companies that you think the USU should maybe not make partnerships with or new benefits with?
My perspective, I think because I don't have lots of information on this, I can't give a comment right now. I'll have to look through all the past companies, and I'll have to do some research before I can give you an answer.
Well, thanks. That's all from me. I think Nick has a couple of questions though.
Yeah, thanks, Ellie. I just have two questions.
Yeah.
So the first one is, in terms of considering the interests of students and the interests of the university when it comes to controversial clubs and societies, which one would you prioritize, the students or the university?
I think because USU is a student-led organization, the priority will be student first.
Right. Awesome. And then within the student body, there are obviously different opinions and often opposing opinions. So with the anti-abortion group being made into a club, some students on campus were obviously not very happy about that, and others were very pro that. So in terms of juggling the different perspectives of the student body, how would you go about that? Would it be a majority rule situation again?
Yes.
Right.
But we still have to still have to balance students in school. So we have to listen to both perspectives before making a decision, to make a fair decision.
Okay. And then I just wanted to ask a question about your secondhand online bookstore policy.
Yeah, sure.
I really like that idea. I'm a law student, so I definitely would love
Yeah.
more secondhand books.
Yeah, and as a book, I can't do online book. I hate looking at the screen, so I really love secondhand book.
Yeah, I really love that too. So my question then is, there are already kind of existing secondhand bookstores like Zookle and Student VIP, and I know that the USU does advertise for Student VIP a fair bit. So how would your secondhand bookstore that you've proposed differentiate itself from these existing ones?
So my policy is to create a platform only for students studying at the University of Sydney, and instead of like having them to find secondhand books all around the internet, instead we provide a platform that they can access to great value secondhand book at once. They don't have to do Google search, they don't have to browse different websites looking for quality secondhand book, but instead they can just come to USU and purchase any books they want if it's available.
Awesome, cool, thank you.
Are you muted?
Sorry. Does anyone else have any other questions? I'm all good.
I'm good too.
Sweet. So that's the end of our interview. Thank you so much for being a part of it. We really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us about these topics. And I guess we'll see you at, are you going to be in our quiz at 6:30?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Looking forward to seeing you then as well. Thank you so much.
You have a
Thank
lovely
you.